Hello students, we will be discussing about molecular interaction, that is a kind of interaction. We will be talking about endocrine interactions. So the cells, like we human beings, we talk to each other, we can communicate with each other, but the cells cannot communicate like us. So how do the cells communicate with each other? First thing, there are few modes of communication. First is autocrine, when cells can communicate with itself. Like when we are self-analyzing or talking to us, that means we are communicating with ourselves. Likewise, cells, what they do, they synthesize and secrete a molecule, and the cell itself again gets the molecule back. And when it accepts a molecule, it functions accordingly. So the function first is called autocrine. Second is paracrine, when the cell is neighboring. Now the third is juxtacrine, when the cell is not neighboring, but the tissue does not secrete the molecule to the bloodstream. And now the final thing comes, the endocrine system, what we will be discussing about. So when we are talking about endocrine system, the meaning we should understand. First, endocrine. Crine stands for secretion and endo stands for inner. So the whole word stands for inner secretion. So the question is, what inner secretion we are talking about? See, if the secretion is inside our body, that means it is always inner. So when we are talking about enzyme, it is also inner our body. When we are talking about any cytokines, any molecules, everything is inside our body. So what is the difference between endocrine's inner and other inner? And when we are talking about enzymes, we are talking about exocrine secretion. So what is the difference between endocrine and exocrine? When we are talking about endocrine secretions, we are talking about few glands. That gland secretes the molecule directly to the bloodstream. So these organs are ductless, it has no specific duct, and it secretes its molecule directly to the bloodstream. So the organs which secretes its molecule directly to the bloodstream are called endocrine organ, and the organ system overall is called endocrine system. And the subject when we are talking about these endocrine systems are called endocrinology. Now in endocrinology, the basic and foremost thing is the hormones. So there are basically three types of hormones. First is peptide. When we are talking about peptide hormones, these are constituents of, and the constituents of the peptides are amino acids. So the bridge of amino acid builds the peptide hormones, and it gets secreted from the tropic organs or many other organs like hypothalamus, pituitary, and many target organs. Next is amide hormones. Amide hormones are nothing but, here like peptide hormones, these are building blocks, building bridges of amino acids. Now the amide hormones are the modified amino acids. Now the third part is the steroid hormone. Now these steroid hormones are the derivative of cholesterol. Now when we are talking about endocrine system, we will talk about peptide, amide, and steroid hormones and how these hormones interact with a cell. So as we know, the cell has a plasma membrane. So that plasma membrane is hydrophobic, hydrophobic, and it is lipophilic. So the molecules which base is hydrophilic, it can not pass the plasma membrane. So like peptide hormones are hydrophilic, so it cannot pass the plasma membrane. Whereas the steroids, which are the derivative of cholesterol, definitely these are lipophilic molecule and it can pass through the plasma membrane. Now, what happens when we are talking about peptide hormones? These peptide hormones do what they do, they interact through membrane receptor. So here, if it is a plasma membrane, there will be a transmembrane receptor or a single transmembrane receptor for the peptide hormones to receive. For amide hormones also these receptors work, but for steroid hormone it can easily pass through the plasma membrane and goes to the cytoplasm, where there is a protein that acts as a receptor for the steroid hormones. Now these steroid hormones, what they do, these receptors are attached to heat shock protein, HSPs. These heat shock proteins get detached from the receptors and the steroid hormone comes to the receptor and attaches with it. Now what all these things do? All these things goes to nucleus, and in the nucleus these molecules work as transcription factor and do the genomic pathway. That's all for this lecture. Thank you.